He is, and that's what I'm talking about. He was talking about how can a Christian support Trump?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And he was like, it's not Trump that I'm putting my faith in. He goes, I'm putting my faith in God, but you also have to look at who has God used in the past for great things.
Right.
And he rattles off a list of all the people in the Bible that you're like, okay, valid point. Like they're not the best role model, type people.
Man, so just sitting there at a table with every time I go home, I get together with some of my best friends and stuff like that, and it's a 50-50 split at the table. But then they were talking about they did get into a politics conversation, and it was just funny. It's funny just to hear a perspective of people, like, how could you support that? And I'm like, both ways. And I'm like, it is that conversation. It's like, hey man, I'm not supporting a person because we're imperfect. Mm-hmm. I'm supporting what I think is policy that supports my moral fiber. And that's what it comes down to. Like, if you're going into a position and voting for something, what is your moral fiber? And if your moral fiber is bent on a person's personality, you're in the wrong.
It's called the personality.
Right. Yeah. Well, and man, it was funny because I was listening to another podcast and they were specifically talking about
no more.
Mm-hmm. Right, but they were specifically talking about leadership qualities and how most leaders are just basically narcissists, right? I mean, you're bent on control and moving your agenda forward and pushing through stuff to get to a quality aspect. So,
that's not a narcissist, but
yeah, I know. But I don't know if that was the exact word. But
everybody needs leadership.
I would say this.
It's very controlling, though.
A lot of top, like, executives and leaders that are out there in corporations do have narcissistic characteristics.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
very.
Greed. It all goes back to greed.
100%. Greed and before the fall, what was there? Pride. Right. So that's it. Flat out. But yeah, we got a lot to talk about then. Are you recording already?
Oh yeah. That's why I've been going out that way. When you're talking, I was going that way. When he was talking, I went that way.
Cool.
Always thinking.
Keep going.
Never stops.
I'd be all over the place, messing everything up.
Never stops until I go to sleep.
But yeah, I mean, from that whole standpoint, though, of thinking about what leadership, like, key leaders in large organizations and everything like that, and me coming from a leadership position where I'm leading a lot of people, I'm like, like, it's very, like, you have process, and it's just like anything people do in life. I mean, they're in that process and they're working through it, and we see personality traits and we're making our decisions based on personality traits, which should never happen, right? We should look to truly identify what puts us in a better position or stands for our moral values. And so much in our lives, like with my parents and family and other people that I talk to around, they're looking at the cover instead of opening the book and reading the pages.
Yep.
I guess that's the best way I could describe it.
I think George Carlin said it, that, every presidential candidate should have to wear their donors and sponsors like a NASCAR.
Yep.
It would be awesome.
And then the flip side
All of
to
Congress
that
needs to.
The flip side to that is, how awesome would it be if presidential candidates ran, but you never got to see a picture of them?
Right.
You only got to see a list of their policies. There was no, like, face-to-face debate.
Yeah.
So that you weren't influenced, number one, by looks. That's one of the big things. You look at somebody and you're like, that's somebody I can follow.
Right.
Right.
It's weird how human nature does
it's
it.
immediate, right? And then whenever you hear them talk, is the way that they talk appealing to you? So you've got those two things immediately that tell you, I like that guy, not that guy, and you don't even know what their policies are yet.
Right.
And then lay out the policies, and then, if
In a perfect world.
it would be. It'd be interesting, because I honestly think, and if you were to lay out this candidate's or this current president's 4 years in what has happened, and then take the 4 prior years, what has happened, the 4 prior years, and what has happened, and compare and say, if you could get somebody to go, hey, just based on the condition our country was in, which one of these terms do you want to come back?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and
And that's the thing is we're in a position right now where both candidates have a record they can run on
yeah,
because they've both done the job.
Right. That's
So-
which you
if,
didn't
if
before.
there is a silver lining,
Well,
right? Well, and that's the other thing, though. I mean, you have people flat talking like, "Hey, it's the lesser of two evils." Well, if you look at the perspective of it's the lesser of two evils, you're kind of at a loss regardless. And
Right.
and they'll say, "Oh, I'm just not going to vote because it doesn't matter anyway. I'm picking the lesser of two evils."
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's still a dictation of your taxation. It's a dictation of everything that's happening within you. But knowing that God appoints authority over everybody, whoever's appointed to that position, we have to support, pray for, and work with regardless, right? Like Jesus is king, right?
Yeah.
We said it in this last week, right? That's you can't get so emotionally wrapped up in a person.
but it's so easy.
It is so easy, but it's so, we're gripping this world so tight. Like, and that's just the picture of what Christ is in our life, is like, let go.
Yeah.
Because when you're gripping that portion so tight, and from a conservative standpoint, and a standpoint of the church, and a standpoint of everything, politics and church never mix. Like, when we're bringing up politics in church, that's Sadducees. That's basically bringing up the heresies, the Sadducees, everything that Jesus came to basically say, be gone. Rule makers, law makers,
So you're
all
saying
those
that
things.
it shouldn't be brought up in church?
No, I'm not saying it shouldn't be brought up
I
in
got
church.
confused then with what you were saying.
I'm just saying it's like oil and vinegar, right? It's
Trying
like
to process
walking
it.
to the temple, and the best image I could say of this right now is watching the end of the last season of The Chosen. Like when they're
I haven't
walking
seen it yet.
into the temple. Oh, I don't want to be a
Spoiler
spoiler
It's
alert.
fine. It's fine. I mean, I'm,
but
read the Bible.
they're basically condemning the preaching of Jesus Christ, and it's specifically being spoken on the floor there, and all the priests, all the Sadducees, they're all sitting there saying, "This guy,"
And it being legalistic.
right? And that's what we work in. That's what we operate in, and that's not what Jesus is bringing to the table. He's saying, "Hey, I came to get rid of politics. I am the King of Kings, but this is all bent on us getting rid of laws that bind us to this place and moving into a new era where we're bringing a tax collector to the table. We're bringing sinners to the table and changing their lives to want to be better." And I think the problem is like, it is the image, right, that we're creating for that person, whatever image fits our, family standard. And you really have both sides of the family standard here. You got your rough riding, I'm going to tell you how it is, no matter what. And it fits an image of I'm hell-bent on America, to I'm in support of everybody, and I want to feed the line that I'm basically for everything. Everybody has their own freedoms. They could do whatever they want in this world. They could even change their gender, right? And it's like, we all grew up in the middle of that. Some people are extreme left, some people are extreme right, and 90% of us are in the middle. But the problem is we're bent on making a choice for something that we really weren't built to support. We're built to support one king.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also, if you have one view, which is pro-life,
Right.
then what it has done is it has taken pro-life and Second Amendment and all of these other ideologies and boxed them together and said, if you believe in pro-life, then you have to believe in this, and this, right? There's
That's
no
how they divide
other
everybody.
category, because if you move
Right.
to this side, then it's pro-choice. And if you're pro-choice, you have to believe in this,
Yeah.
and there's there really
no
is no middle ground.
They took
Right.
it away.
Because when is the last time that anybody that is in between, of the two parties has ever been successful in anything, really? It's always just been, you're either on this side or you're on this side.
Right.
And that's where they have the problems with, which I do like, like the podcasts and the other forms of media that are coming out now that are people like us sitting here and talking.
Yeah.
Like the Joe Rogan show is an example of that, where he kind of does sit in the middle.
Right.
He is pro-choice, but he's also Second Amendment, and he's got very conservative views whenever it comes to certain things, but he's got very
What a new concept.
liberal views when it comes to other things. And
Right.
people are like,
Yeah.
how do I categorize this person?
But that's
Yep.
like when we were kids, I feel like it was more middle driven within our even home environments than it is now in any way
Social
where you're
media
choosing
just
sides, right?
Destroy people.
Well, yeah, I think that is a big portion of it because here's the problem. You're pro-choice, but your Second Amendment, like Joe Rogan, for instance, like you're saying, and you're sitting there, well, people are rah-rahing you for being pro-choice, especially from the left side, like hitting it hard. And then they're like, but you like guns? And then they're all of a sudden like, well, you can't kill babies, but you could kill people, and that's the storyline that comes from it. And you're like, you could support both ways. You could have the freedom of choice and free will that God has given us. He's ordained that to us to have the ability to work through our mind and choose based on what we view as sin or view as proportionate to our lives. And that's the thing. Like, I'm not going to walk around and tell a person just because, they had an abortion at one point in their life that they should go to hell and die, right? But people look at us and think that's the viewpoint that we have because we're
Right.
pro-choice or not pro-choice. And I'm like, no, I just like it's God's creation, right?
Yeah.
Just because I think it's God's creation doesn't mean I dictate what goes on in your head. And that's what even still welcoming everybody to the table, like we've talked about on previous podcasts, means to us is like, we're not here to judge you for the things that you think and feel.
Right.
We're here to judge you as a creation by God for a purpose, on purpose.
Did you see the one girl that spoke at the RNC? I can't remember her name. She's the lighter-skinned black girl, shaved head, and she has the tattoo.
Amber Rose?
Amber Rose, thank you. I found, I had no clue who that woman was. And then I saw her little speech pop up, and I watched it, and I was like, wow.
She's one that got shown the truth.
Well,
She's
and
like, whoa,
and
he's
she
not a
got
bad
shown
person.
the truth by her own research because her father challenged her, because she was like, no, Trump is racist. And he goes, no, he's not. How is he racist? And she
They
was
want you
like,
to
I'm
think
going to prove it to you. So she went on this deep dive into Trump and then walked away going,
It's kind of like the case for Christ when
Yes,
the
it's
guy,
exactly like
he
that.
wanted to prove
The
that
journalist.
Christ was not the Son of God, and so he dove into it, and
and
lo and behold, he became a believer.
kept trying to disprove and
Right.
figured out that he couldn't. Like,
Yeah, same
it's
kind of thing.
interesting.
Not to compare Trump to Christ, but it's
No,
the same,
at all.
same
But
analogy.
no, it's the thought process.
Well, you gave me something that was completely on my mind, and it's a book that I read, and I'm trying to think of the author. It's been a little bit now, but Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus.
Yeah, that's a Muslim guy.
Yeah,
Which one?
it's Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus.
Seeking all of finding Jesus.
Well, of course it comes on when I'm saying it, and I'm trying to figure out the author's name, and I can't see because my eyes are just that old.
Well, you might not be able to pronounce it either.
I probably would chop it up.
Butcher that name.
Yeah, Nabil Qureshi.
Okay.
Nabil Qureshi, and he's a guy that he ended up dying
Allah,
of stomach
Finding
cancer, I
Jesus.
believe, but he fought so hard, and obviously in the Muslim faith, if you're converting from the Muslim faith to Christianity, it's like a death sentence
Right.
within your family,
Right.
and then it's also considered treason. So like you could be killed
Well,
for
yeah.
your beliefs.
Yeah.
So this guy, I mean, long story short, flat out went to prove a case against Christ and talk about Muhammad and the prophet Muhammad and who he was in comparison to Christ. But it's so interesting to hear that backstory of, it's like Abraham had his first son, which we know how that happened in the story of the Bible. That's the birth of the Muslim faith right there, going from Abram. So basically they still view Abraham as the father of religion, even in the Muslim faith, but then going to Muhammad and explaining how that came about, and then also just the lost books and different things. But it was the whole thing. It's like finding that person within, like Trump, Biden, whoever you want to support. It's finding the person within the person. What you see here again is a cover. It's a book cover. Exactly. And what are covers meant to do? Sell you books.
Pique your interest.
So that's where I get frustrated, even in having conversations with friends, is I don't want to sit there and talk about it because you're looking at the cover.
Well, and that's the thing is with, back when we were growing up, when our parents are our age now, when there was no social media, you didn't know anybody's political views. And if you went to church with them, you probably did. I mean, just because those are your church friends and you get to know people that way. But you didn't go over to your neighbor's house and start an argument about your political beliefs because you didn't like the sign in their yard. Right. But now people just do it online.
Right.
By the millions and millions at a time.
And the sad thing is that online, it's not face-to-face. Right. So it's easier to say things that you normally wouldn't say when you're face-to-face with people.
To get you punched.
Yeah.
Face-to-face might get you a broken nose.
And it goes down to that line of it, becomes an attack online. It becomes something that becomes so real to a person that you have something like what happened, 6 days ago in our life, where somebody takes an attempt at one of those guys' lives because the hate that was fostered in a bunch of different forums. Yeah. Right? And
when you're calling somebody the Orange Hitler and that he is going to end democracy and end this country, you're going to have those extreme-minded people that are going to take that at face value and say, we can't let this happen again. I'm going to be the person that steps in and saves this country. And it's sad that there's not, or there hasn't been ownership in that yet. And I mean, Biden has gotten in front of a camera and he has said some things that hold some legitimacy, and I think it was, who was I listening to? I think it was Ben Shapiro, but Ben Shapiro said it best. If he had just added the words, me included, it would have completely changed what he was saying, because he was pointing the finger at people and not taking that ownership and saying, look, I am also to blame, me included. Like, I need to realize that our influence can cause something like this.
Yeah, and it is kind of crazy that they're in charge of the Secret Service.
Right.
To guard your opponent.
Well, think about that, because think about it all, even what you said, the ownership portion. I mean, when we even discussed it here, that book, Extreme Ownership, and the way Navy SEALs approach their job and what they're doing. I mean, we live in a place where nobody wants to own a thing, but yet reap the benefits of everything they see.
I mean, you see that right now with the director of the Secret Service.
Right.
There is zero ownership in that situation whatsoever. It's a bunch of finger pointing and lame excuses of there's a slope on that roof.
Yeah.
Like,
when the other roof was more sloped that they were on shooting from.
And you're approaching that from an HR standpoint of it's a liability and we might get somebody hurt. No, your purpose out there is to keep this one person from getting hurt.
The lies are crazy.
Yeah. If you are willing to throw your body on top of him when rounds are being fired, what is being on a sloped roof? Like that, it's completely counterintuitive to the objective, to the mission of what your job is. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
No. It's simple. I failed.
Right.
Because my team failed.
Right.
And my team failed because shots were fired. I mean, so, and that's the thing. People don't want to admit failure because they don't want to lose position. Right? And what we learn and what we stand in faith is position's not important, because there's only one position that matters. What matters is the moral truth, right? The thing that drives how you're like basically bringing good into light, right? It's the difference between light and darkness. An excuse, we can look at that and basically say that's darkness in our life. And every time we don't expose that, we're giving a crack for something more to come in.
That's good.
And have access to us.
Right. Take ownership.
And that's what not owning any situation is. And I took that on wholeheartedly in the business world. And at first, I was afraid because you have political stances, you have people, jockeying for position that want to overtake others. But at some point, you have to say the things. And you find out it becomes more respectable to speak the right ways. I mean, there's right place, right time, which you always should adhere to, but you gotta, I mean, if you don't have a good moral compass, it catches up to you. And I've seen it eat people up like crazy. And some of the best people we know, I mean, we've seen it recently to some people we truly love, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's how I could chase another squirrel right now, and I'd probably leave it right there. But I was listening to, I drove 16 hours home the other day, and I was listening to another podcast about somebody who is trapped in a lie. And but that's what we're living in when we're basically making excuses, is trapping ourselves in a lie that gives access to other things to creep in. And
it just results in more lies.
Right. And I mean, we're all guilty of it in some way. I mean, all of us sin.
Sure.
So,
right.
And it's funny because we like to get up here and say that we're fully exposed, but then something like that happens with people close to you, and you're like, man, what could I analyze in my back pocket that I haven't brought out into the light, that I'm actually giving access to the devil to creep into my life? And people are like, well, you're really making analogies over that, and I don't see it that way. Well, start just being honest with people, right? I mean,
it's hard. I mean, it's hard, especially if you've been living that life for a long time.
Right.
And I know
we
what
talked
that's
about
like.
that a couple weeks ago.
It's hard to get yourself back, I guess, because you think there's just no redemption. There's no way back, kind of thing. And I mean, my sins are different than other people's, but the addiction part, it was. I mean, that is a sin because you're giving that control and power over you. And
right.
So it's hard.
Well, think about it from the standpoint of somebody who you trust and love is living in a lie, and you're supporting that lie by loving them through the lie.
Yeah, no.
Then basically they're exposed to the same danger you have in that.
Yeah.
And that's the other portion. Like, I don't know where compassion level steps in with it. I mean, because sin and addiction are two different portions. Like God works through us in different ways, and that breaks us of it, so our story comes out at a different time. But that is your story coming out, for instance, is light, and that light is maybe seeing somebody else on the other side of this and taking away the addiction that they have too. And maybe leading, and this is us too, maybe leading somebody to a relationship with the Father who loves us and what we've seen in that. But the other portion is, on the flip side of that, is to continually push it down and bury it and not talk about it in a manner that just, like, you don't need to attack our way through it, right? We don't need to fight our way into it and say, this is better. This, it's like the whole, I want to be different, different versus better, right? But at the same time, it's true, because, indicating that it's better is downplaying the other situation, in which so many people are sitting here right now trying to judge, like, well, why are you downplaying my situation? And that gives them an opportunity to point a finger and run. And as Christians, as Christian men,
throw gas on the fire kind of thing.
That is gas on the fire for us. It is. It literally is, because everybody is already coming at us with a like thinking we have an opinion, when realistically we're just going to try and create a relationship, and the relationship's not even with us.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's the hard thing for people to hear. Like when we have a forum like this, and they're like, well, these guys are trying to create a relationship with us, but it's not with us, it's with Christ.
Right.
So it's different.
And like I'm going through a situation similar to that with a buddy of mine. And like you're talking about, like you don't want to cast stones at them for what they're doing wrong, but you do want to bring to light, hey, like the stuff that you're going through is because of decisions that you've made. And I'm walking through something with a friend of mine like that has a situation like that right now. And what you're saying is it's not our job is to walk with them and lead them to Christ.
Right.
It's Christ who can heal them.
Correct.
I can't heal anyone.
Right.
Like that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to be a brother, is to walk it out with you, to stand in the gap with you while you're going through this stuff, to be a moral compass for you, to give you good counsel.
Right.
And to lack of a better term, hold your hand as you're walking through this, but I cannot heal you.
Right.
I cannot fix whatever issue it is that you have. The only person that can is Jesus. And my buddy that's gone through this situation, everything started to fall apart and crumple once his wife found out about adultery. And it was like the entire house of cards just crumbled right then and there. And it was his wife, who is also a friend of ours, that reached out to me and said, I need you to help. I need you to help my husband. Like, she knows, and I know, because we've talked about this, that Casey and I were put into their lives for a reason. And at the time, we had no clue what that reason was. But we knew, God, you put us into this couple's life for a reason. And we've been friends with them now for, close to probably 8 years. And no clue through those 8 years. We thought, like, okay, maybe we're the ones that just are going to lead them to the church, which we have done. We've got them going to church. We've got both of them doing more of a deep dive into the Bible and understanding, but it was like, I know that's not the reason why. And then this incident happens, and I'm able to sit here and walk with him through these things. I got him into treatment, which he's still in. Okay. I went and sat with him the other day out at the facility that he's at. We were able to go sit on the couch with nobody around and just kind of talk. And to see what this horrible situation has done for his relationship and his walk with Christ is amazing. He was like, dude, I get up every morning. He goes, in this little parking lot right here, it's an oval. He goes, I walk that oval. Everybody else is still asleep. He goes, I walk that oval for about an hour and a half.
Wow.
And all I do is pray and have a conversation with God.
Wow.
He was like, I'm in the process of reading the Bible from front to back. He was given Jesus Calling, the journal. And he was like, and that's a great opportunity. He goes, dude, I dive into that thing every day. And he was like, and I write through it. And he goes, it's nice because it leads me to other places. As he's reading through the Bible, it kind of bounces him around in places. He was like, it's amazing. And like, we were able to sit there because he's a baby whenever it comes to his relationship with Jesus. And he was like, dude, I pray every morning whenever I wake up. I pray over every meal, and then I pray every night before I go to bed. And I was like, well, it says in the Bible that you're supposed to pray without ceasing, right? And I was like, do you understand what that means? And he was like, no, I don't. He was like, I pray in the morning, I pray over my 3 meals, and I pray when I go to bed. And I was like, the best example that I can give you, man, is think about, because he was my partner when we were on the street together. And I was like, think about you and I working a 10-hour shift together. We're in that car together. We're sitting side by side with each other, but we're not talking continually through that 10 hours, right? But every decision that I make affects you. I was like, you need to think about your day from start to end as your co-pilot sitting right next to you is Jesus. You know, when you're in the car with me in that 10-hour shift, if you've got a question, you can lean on me and ask me that question.
Yeah.
You know, think of it that way, because every decision that you make throughout the day, you need to think about me when we're in that car. Every decision you make throughout the day, you need to think about Jesus and how is that going to affect your relationship with him. You can lean on him for just simple things like, God, just help me out in this situation. Like, help me with what I need to do in this situation. Like, every little thing you can continually, it doesn't have to be a verbal conversation. And you don't have to think of it as a structured prayer.
Right.
But it can just be an ongoing conversation throughout the day, making sure that you're on the right path and you're going the right direction. You could see him sitting there and he's like, man, I never thought about it that way.
Right.
And I was like, it's a lot of little things as you develop that relationship, because that's what it is. It's not religion. It's that relationship with him.
Right.
And you're in a perfect place right now because you don't have to worry about the outside world.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's kind of like prison. When you gave me the image of him walking around in a circle for an hour and a half.
It is very much like that.
That's where he's going to read and pray, but you're bettering yourself for when you get out.
And what he was saying is, he goes, whenever I got here, he goes, now mind you, he goes, my issues aren't as extreme as most of the people that are in here. He was like, people that are in here are dealing with addiction or they've got a serious mental health issue. He was like, I've got an anger issue and I've got a lust issue. He was like, but for the most part, I've got everything else put together. And he goes, they have seen me walking in the morning. You know, they see me bow my head before I eat my meal. It was like, they see all these things. And he goes, you would be amazed at how many people come up to me and ask, what are you doing? You know, and then they're like, well, what's this journal that you're writing in? And he's had an opportunity through that to sit down with these people. And the guy that I saw go into that treatment facility and who he is right now, he's about 30 days in, totally different person.
Right.
Totally different person.
I love it.
And the amazing thing about it is it was voluntary.
Right.
He saw an issue, ownership, and said, I've got to do something about this before somebody comes and mandates that I have to do this, you know. And he's owning, and I've had to help him a little bit, because like the first, he'll get upset about something and I'm like, hey, and I'm not going to use his name, but it's like, hey, you're here because of you.
Right.
Like, you made a conscious decision to do something, and everything that's happening after that is a result of your decision. So you need to own that.
Right. And it's funny because we sit in a world where people think it's our job to tell others what their problems are. It's never our job. I mean, God appointed judges in the Bible, and it was their job, but they were spiritual authority over that given clan or at that given time. And it's the same with us, like with our friends. Like, there's instances where people will come up and be like, man, I got a word for you, or I got something for you. But if that word does not edify or build you up, is that prophecy?
Right. You're saying if it's knocking you down,
No. Anything you're doing to knock somebody down is not from God, right? Nothing you could, like, if somebody's like, man, I just got this word and your mouth is too sharp today, you need to curve what you're saying. That's not from God, man. I probably need to be checked, and I thank you for your authority over me in that situation. But at the same time, it's like, when you're walking up to somebody like your buddy, like, I see a noticeable change in you for the good. Man, what's God doing in your life? That's God's prophecy working through it. And it was funny because right when you started talking, I thought of a verse that puts that to light, and it was 1 Corinthians 14:3. It's, but the one who prophesies speaks to people for their strengthening, encouraging, and comfort. And that's what that story is about. And that's what people need to realize in this world too. Like, if you're hearing something that's dead to your ears, that is not building you up, it's not coming from a place where you need to sit and stir and dwell.
It also, really isn't. The only way for somebody to pull you down, they have to be beneath you.
Right.
So it's people that lift you up tend to be above you, right? Here, let me help you up here. And people that drag you down have to be below you. They want to pull you down to your level. Those are the people you got to run from. You know, you want that person that's sticking that hand down and saying, hey, come on, brother, get up here with me.
You gave me a crazy vision of like old school horror films back in the 80s where the hands are coming out of the ground and they're like pulling people down, trying to get them with them. And
I love how he's in there and God's already using him to lift people up.
Right.
Yes, which is awesome.
Because of his faithfulness and his obedience to voluntarily do this. Well, he's already being used by God to help people that are hurt and broken.
That's it right there. And like
that's the light right
there.
The
whole idea behind testimonies and stuff like that too. The more light you shed on,
you just made me think of one.
The darkness that we have.
Yeah.
The more draw and attention there is to it, and people see that joy through you. It was funny because I just watched that Inside Out 2 movie with my kids the other day, and
I think I've seen that.
It's where the girl she's turning into a teenager, and it's all the attitudes in her brain basically working through the movie and stuff like that. It's funny, it's creative, but anxiety comes in and is trying to push out joy because anxiety needs to run the situation, right? But it's such a perfect picture of how our minds operate. When you're anxious, where it's, Philippians 4:6, I could rattle that off right away because that's my family life verse. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation with prayer and petition, present your request to God. With thanksgiving, present your request to God, and he will do it. But it's anxiety comes in, and this girl's becoming a teenage girl, and she wants to make varsity hockey on the freshman hockey team, because she's originally from Minnesota, so girls do love hockey in Minnesota, just like boys.
Minnesota.
Yeah. But anxiety throws Joy out, who used to run the show during, the all the years leading up to the end of middle school, because kids have joy until they get to middle school, especially teenage girls, right? Then anxiety sets in and judgment of society sets in. Oh, and then anxiety pushes her out, and then they go through the whole movie and everything's getting screwed up because she's being run by her anxious thoughts and the craziness of the anxious thoughts. But then a little bit of joy works in and intermingles with anxiety and intermingles with sadness and intermingles with mad, and they all kind of harmoniously live together in this girl's mind by the end of the movie. And that's where she's like, she makes the team, as the final clip of the movie. But that's our mind.
Joy took it.
But joy has to be there. Like, people look at us like Christ is that joy in us. And people are like, man, why are you smiling? Why are you so happy? It's because I know, like, I'm here for a purpose. And I can't be brought out of that mindset. Like, we used to hide from it with addiction, right? And you get to a point where you finally just get it. It's like a light bulb moment that goes off in your head. Yeah. And you're like, oh.
It's one of the reasons I really loved working at church and volunteering and serving, is because it's always happy. I'm always happy there.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I've left a church service going, oh, that was brutal. But
it's a kick in the teeth.
It's a kick in the teeth.
That's conviction.
Right. But it was always a place where I had joy. Even growing up as a kid, I always loved going to our church.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned that.
Should have done it more often, I guess.
I used to walk in churches and be like, before I was saved, and be like, is that real? Like,
are people really this happy?
Are they that real? They're just BSC. and that's my abbreviation is BAT something crazy, right? And keep this PG today.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I'm like, man, you won't ever find me in one of those churches getting baptized. Those crazy people. So,
I never pictured myself being in a hand-raising church.
Right.
Or non-denominational hand-raising. But I grew up in a Presbyterian church, and it was all hymns, and everything was ordered. And orderly.
Grew up in a Catholic church, and, like, before the idea of what true worship was in my mind. It's like playing through the stages of hand raising. I forget what it's called, but you get to the final stage of touchdown and then flying through the air or something like that.
Touchdown Jesus.
Yeah, but
at church camp and stuff, and like high school retreats, where I even sang at one point. A friend of mine played guitar. I met another guy on drums, but a little bit of that kind of stuff was there, even at Presbyterian church camp, but not all the, praise and worship and shouting and praying while you're singing too. It was more just kids, teenagers too, just kind of.
But again,
looking to see what the other one is doing and whether or not.
Again, why aren't you raising your hands?
Is it okay to clap, kind of thing?
What are you afraid of? And that is a picture of.
Well, it's just how
we see this world,
too.
Right? We don't want to be judged for raising our hands.
But I didn't really know any better. Like, I didn't know any better until
you didn't understand what that was for.
Really. I mean, I knew non-denominational churches were different than traditional denominations. Obviously, I mean, I've been to Baptist church too, and there's a little bit of it in there. But when you get to the non-denominational, it's like Jesus party. It's like, this is my kind of place.
Well, it's funny, too. Then you get behind the closed doors of a church and you serve, and you're like, man, they're still that happy with all that crazy going on.
Yeah.
It's truth. I mean, that's, are we that happy? Yes. Is our life a hot mess a lot of the time?
Sometimes, yeah.
But
it also comes down to when you have that relationship and you have the Holy Spirit, it comes down to an understanding of what you have control over and what you don't.
Right.
And I think that gets rid of a lot of anxiety too. And if you don't have anxiety, what do you have? You've got joy, and
peace.
And
content.
if
we're going to go with the Beatitudes.
Right.
If like in a, I guess in a worldly explanation of it, and I think it's Simon Sinek that talks about it, but he talks about circle of control, and then the circle of influence, and like anything outside of those two, there's no point in putting any effort into stressing or being anxious about what's going on. You have the circle of control, which is what I can immediately change or do. And if I can't immediately change or do anything about it, then it's outside of my circle of control. And then your circle of influence is, well, I might be able to influence people to get that change. But if I can't influence somebody to get that change, then it's outside of my circle of influence. And once it's outside of my circle of influence, then it's out of my hands.
Right.
And if I can understand that I have no control over that situation, then the energy that I spend worrying or being anxious about that is energy that I could be spending on other important things.
Right.
And when you have the Holy Spirit in you, you realize, man, there are just some things that I need to quit worrying about.
Right.
Like, it's out of my hands. I know what my destiny is. I know where I'm going, and I know no matter what happens outside of my circle of influence or circle of control, God's got me.
Yeah.
And if you can have that peace, man.
Yeah.
I didn't have it until I quit drinking. But then I started to understand it.
And it's so we've all seen sermons like this. It's in messages like this and speeches like this of encouragement and stuff like that. It's the Big Rock sermon where you got the jar, and then there's this whole line of different types of rocks. There's the big rocks, the pebble or the stones, the pebbles, the sand, and then the water. And if you put them in out of order, like if you're not putting the big rocks, the important things in first, they don't all fit. But if you put them in that order of succession, and you know you're dealing with the most important things that are in probably that circle first of direct influence, and that other circle next, you're taking care of the order the proper way that God set forth for us to take care of it. And that's where people get messed up. They're looking at the water and the sand, trying to make sense of it, when they really should be concentrating on the one thing, right? And in other books, in other leadership books, we call it the whirlwind. We call it everything that distracts you, that takes your focus away from what really matters, is meant to take you off track. And you really have to view it like that.
Yeah.
It is almost a personal attack on your life. And that's the problem with us being ADD too, because almost every single one of us sitting at this table are. And we talked about it with Coot.
Every single one of us.
We are, yeah. And especially because I don't make sense.
I've learned to embrace it.
But
you just got to go with it.
That's the problem, is we have the ability to chase that squirrel. And it's like, how do we bring our focus back? And it's like praying without ceasing, like you said.
Yeah.
Like, I have to pray through my crazy every day to bring me back to focus, right? And that's what having a life centered does you. And that's Christ centered, Yeah. Bringing it back to the craziness of what's going on now. I mean, here we are walking into it, and do we have a Democratic nominee moving forward? Do we
still got 4 months to go?
Right,
they've already shot one of them.
Yeah.
What else can they do?
Try
They can try again. I'm not thinking they won't try again, but
well, of everything they've tried,
man,
nothing stuck.
That October surprise came a little early.
Man, it's even crazy to see the image of where his head actually turned from, right?
I know,
When that
I'm
bullet
See
was
it whenever
fired.
it had the crosshairs on it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
that
it was
3D model
dead
of it, where you turn
center,
the 3D.
and it just
Crazy.
I mean,
You been
if
shot
there
at that
isn't a
close?
greater hand
Do I?
in
You've
control.
been shot at that close? Bullets
I've
whizzing
had-
by.
Yes, we have one incident that I can think of, that we were rolling up and the rounds were coming in the direction that I was going in. Now, were they specifically meant for me? No, but they were coming in my direction, and yeah, that's not a
I can't imagine.
I will say this.
That is a
His
depends
composure,
moment.
and if you listen to that where they're trying to rush him off stage and he's saying, let me get my shoes, like I don't know how many people have ever been in a life or death situation, and that is, I mean, he literally got hit by a bullet, and to have the mindset, the wherewithal of that fight or flight, I mean, he was 100%, I mean, he even said it, fight. He does not have a flight mentality whatsoever.
No, he would have
And
continued
that
his speech if they'd let him.
Whether you like him or not, that is impressive. To be as composed as he was through that, and to tell those people, hold on, I got to get my shoes, and then I'm going to stand up over y'all, stick my head out, and continue talking to this crowd. Like, I don't care whether you like him or not. That from a psychological standpoint is that is a fight mentality.
Because what do those stars and stripes mean to us at the end of the day? Like, we go back away from the Jesus is King mentality, but as an American, we're very proud of everything that has ever happened to bring us to the freedoms that we enjoy. And that is the depiction of strength.
Everybody should be.
Most of us are. Everybody listening to this podcast probably are. No, no. If you don't, we could talk about
Do
it.
self-inventory.
Yeah, that's all right. But that's it. It's the fact of seeing that strength under fire.
Literally.
It
Because literally.
probably put a lot of people at ease. Going back to the whole anxious and worry thing about the state of the world and us and everything else.
Like if
we can be anxious and worry about what's coming, but we don't have any control over it. It's out of our circle.
Yeah, you can try and continue to give us a golden shower, but we're going to fight back.
That I had to keep,
Good
and
thing
still to
nobody
this day,
listened to that.
remind myself to. You got to let that go. You can't control it.
I'm glad none of you heard what I just said. So,
Wait, what'd you say?
Oh, it was recorded.
Cut the tape. No, I said
On its own track.
yeah,
I can go back
something about a golden shower. But,
Whoa.
yeah, it's I got bad. My mind went there. So I'm like,
Rusty
you can't-
water
you-
hose?
I said something. You can't continue to give us a golden shower and not expect us to fight back. It's,
Right?
You know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. You can only pee in the wind so many times.
yeah. Don't eat the yellow snow. Don't eat the yellow snow. Squirrel.
That went downhill.
Oh, that's
Squirrel!
That's the south side of Chicago, right there.
We had to get that in.
Ain't much snow
South side.
here.
No. I would say, though, I was driving through the central United States. It's funny, like, you're traveling through, Missouri and Arkansas, and I traveled through Oklahoma this last week, and just different things, and just different people, just observing it and just seeing how they go about life. And it's funny how that's the one thing that I enjoy about my job most is I could actually just see how others live throughout our even just great nation, right? Yeah. And from one side of Texas to the other, to the north, to the south, to the middle, there is not one place that is the same. And that's what this place is about. So why are we trying to make it uniform?
I don't know.
Why are we conforming to a uniform decision when we serve a God
forces
that is
of evil at work?
The God we serve, though, has made those differences for us to be celebrated within it.
Right.
And, it's funny because that sounds like a liberal viewpoint to a point, right? But at the same time, it's just saying, like, hey, like, we all want to see us succeed.
Yeah.
So why are we trying to... We do.
There's some people that don't want to see us, people like us, succeed.
Well, and that's the funny thing.
Or their neighbors.
Yeah. I could totally go a different direction there about being...
But again, I think
there.
The point that you're making is that it comes down to free will.
Right.
And my viewpoint is I may have a belief, but I'm not going to shove my belief down your throat and try and force you to believe the things that... Now, I'll have a conversation with you. We could talk about it. Sure. And at the end of the day, if you go, hey, I just don't agree with you, that's great. I don't have a problem with that. But I'm not going to try and force my views and my policies on you, and I don't expect you to do that to me. And that's where the problem comes, is when somebody tries to force those views, those opinions, those policies on you. And God gave us free will. Now, that doesn't mean that we're always going to use that free will to make the right decision, but it is my free will to choose how I'm going to use it.
And that's where that fight came out in some of us at the wrong times, right? But that's exactly it. We sit at that table, and I'm sitting with my best friends, and they all, I told you there's one that once listened to this podcast now, and he's gotten engaged and started saying, hey man, we really need this, and this is a great thing for this time. And the other one that was sitting at the table is the one that I said, hey, he's told me I rather believe in aliens than believe in God, and I pray for him every day. I'm like, I pray for his salvation every day, and maybe he'll hear this someday and know that. But in the differences of those people, we don't fight about any of it. I'm not attacking their viewpoints in anger. I'm sitting there like, okay, it's just your dumb idea, but that's okay. I still love you.
Yeah.
You're a guy that would take a bullet for me, and I would take a bullet for you. And they know that. They've been my friends my whole life. Yeah. Right? So that's like, where did we lose that as a nation?
Are you asking for an answer? Because I got one for you.
Let's go.
Social media.
You've said it a few times today.
You could. There's enough data to go back and see where the country started to fall apart, and that's when everybody got to share their opinion with everybody.
Yeah.
Whereas before, you actually had to go to a bar and hang out with your friends and know, or talk
so
to your neighbor.
So that created the relationship.
Or talk to your neighbor or your friend at church. You didn't just go and announce to the world what you think about other people and their opinions.
Yeah.
And then
while
spew
hiding
vitriol
behind,
and
while
and
hiding
hate.
behind the keyboard.
While hiding behind the keyboard, and you're just spewing hate and evil into the world. Not us, not me. I tried to always keep it very, fun and light. It's what it was meant to be. But it got a hold of, evil. Evil got a hold of it.
Yeah.
And it brought out the worst in people. This is the problem. And then everybody had a view into the world of everybody else. And all you do at that point is just stir up hate.
Right.
That's where it all fell apart. 2006.
And we could dig back into books of the Bible that tell us when the end is near, everybody will be offended.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't have to get to end of the world prophecy here, but at the end of the day, it's everybody's kind of getting offended.
Yeah.
So, are we in the end times? I don't know. I'm not going to live like there's no tomorrow every single minute,
Sure.
but at the end of the day, it's like...
It's kind of hard to think we're not.
Right.
Just with all the, the mark of the beast being digital currency. And, it's kind of hard. With one good thing about the internet and social media is it has spread the gospel.
Yeah.
And
Well, there are a lot of pros.
And once that gets spread all around the earth to everyone on earth.
I actually think I got a notification
So it's getting
that
quick. It's happening quick.
The Bible app is 18 years old today.
Wow.
So I
Are
think...
are you going to try and bring social media to the Sentinel Islands?
I'm not. But, Elon could do it with Starlink. Drop some cell phones. Linked up to Starlink. Didn't they do that to a tribe in the Amazon last month?
I have no idea. I just know
And
the
they
Sentinel
all got
Islands
addicted
are
to
the
porn.
one.
They got addicted to porn and something else, and the whole tribe was like going crazy.
Seriously?
Yeah,
I'll have to
find
look that up. I haven't heard that.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, like within weeks they were.
I just
They were
know
addicted.
the
They were
Sentinel
addicted to it.
Islands are the ones where a couple of missionaries have tried to go over there, and
They didn't come back.
I don't even think they make it to.
Is that where they were chunking spears at the
Yes,
boats? Okay,
yes.
I know what you're talking about.
So I think the story behind that is that they originally did have somebody go over there
Yep.
under the guise of a mission and introduced sickness and a little perversion.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they got rid of that dude, they said, not again. Fool me once.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
It just has to reach them. They can decide what to do with it.
agreed.
Right?
And it's funny, and I'm not
But
gonna...
I don't know how that works.
It's not gonna... I'm not gonna, driving through the country again. I'm gonna go back to that. I saw some, I don't know the religion, the Amish religion, or any of that, but like dudes with the full beard,
Mm-hmm.
the dress, you can indicate them, but they're rolling up in like a nicer car now instead of the buggy. And it's like,
Well,
but
I think
it
you've got
is.
different sects of
Got the
the
Amish,
Amish.
and then the Mennonites.
yeah.
Mennonites. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the other one. But it's funny because
way
you're
off
like,
there.
okay, so where's that religion come into play? And then where's that crack separate, right? To separate
Mm-hmm.
from the standards that you've set forth to keep pace with what you need. And our access, digitally, everything is how we let things in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'm not 100% against social media. Obviously, that's where we are.
yeah.
But that's where everybody is. So we have to shine our light into it and overcome all the junk and garbage that's on there.
Well, and
And
that's
hate.
So in a broken world that's falling and stuff like that, where everybody's offended, that's where we're trying to shed light, right?
I'd be interested
Yeah.
to see what the church thought the end times were going to be during World War I and World War II.
Yeah.
We have not experienced
That's a good
War.
a
question.
war like that.
No.
Now, they didn't have social media back then, so what was going on wasn't as in your face as it would be right now. But I can imagine that during those wars, the church
Well,
had to be thinking, this is the end times.
Imagine Hiroshima, not Nagasaki.
That's what I'm saying.
When the bomb was dropped,
That's what I'm saying.
like,
We are not what we're experiencing right now is nothing compared
Right.
to what was going on in World War I and World War II.
Well, and man, I forget the author of the book, but this woman I was listening to on Rogan's podcast, actually, which
Annie Jacobson, The Nuclear War.
yeah, and talking about how there used to be
She did Sean Ryan too.
70,000 plus nuclear warheads pointed in all directions,
Yeah,
and it's down to 12,500
Yeah.
now. But at the point, it's
Well,
still
and they're more advanced,
total
they're larger.
Yeah, it's still total annihilation.
Right.
And just think about that. If somebody just has the wrong depiction at one point in time and hits one button, the other guy has 6 minutes to decide if they counter or not. And all of them have the counter button.
it's just the whole scenario when she's talking about it, and she's so serious
all
when she
just go-
talks that it makes you really she brings it home.
Yeah.
She makes it.
Are you worried a little or worried a lot? And
have
if
no
you're rooted
control.
in Christ, right, you're just like, nah.
But she
Just
also
another
said,
day.
I'm pretty sure she said, or if it was Sean Ryan when she was on his also last week, that we'll never know anyway that there's missiles coming because they're not going to warn us in time anyway.
Yeah.
But it only takes 26 minutes.
Yeah.
She said by the time they're here and exploding, we're all going to be dead. Just be like, oh, hey, it's out.
Right. So, again, then you get to the place, like biblically speaking, a third is left, right? A third. Because when you're
Oh, that's
going
a big
through
one right there.
the different stages of it, and after, everything that happens, and I don't want to get into just the whole book of Revelation right now, but
I bet there are a lot of people reading it this week.
yeah.
A lot.
I would say.
Revelations
Yeah.
or Revelation.
Yeah.
Have you seen John Rich came out with a song that is specifically?
He was just on Tucker's show.
He was. So I was listening to that where he was talking about how God basically gave him the words for that song.
He wrote it in like an hour.
Yeah.
It's like I went,
I
sat
heard
down,
the song.
wrote it all up.
Well,
It's like, boom, there it
he
is.
was like, but he'll say, "I didn't write it." He goes,
It was
"God
given
gave me
to
the words."
Yep. God gave it
And
to
God said, use what you have access to and get this out there. And he was comparing it because it's like in the top 5 of all genres right now. And he was looking at the other songs that were in it, and he talks about Eminem's current album that's out there that
Lucifer.
talks about Lucifer, evil,
like
and the
titles of the
Antichrist.
songs. Yeah.
Yeah, Lucifer, evil, and Antichrist, are in direct conflict of what he's putting out there.
And they're both at the top of the charts.
Right.
We're at a point where it's like one of them's going to win eventually.
Have you watched the video?
Well, we already know.
I watched
wins.
part of it while I was watching the interview, but I was watching the interview while I was working. I pulled it up on my phone, but I haven't watched all of it.
And what you consider a win in this place or wherever, yeah, we already know who wins, and that's the best thing about our life is we know who wins, even if it isn't here in the playground. It's ultimately
Can't worry about it.
right.
Right.
So it's just
God's
man.
in control.
Yeah. So we've talked about some of those funny movies about who's left and stuff like that, or where'd all the people go? That book
Left Behind?
Yeah, Left Behind. Isn't that the book that's written, Left Behind, or where did all the people go?
It's a series.
Nicolas Cage was in one of those movies.
Oh yeah. But
He was
then
the pilot.
Kirk Cameron was the original.
Was it?
Kirk Cameron was the original.
Was the one Nicolas Cage did a remake of it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Just bumped the microphone. But
Well, I liked them both.
no, but my wife has a book. Like I think it's called Left Behind, and she has it
it's
sitting
a
on a
series.
not Left Behind. Where did all the people go?
Okay.
That's what the book's called, and we have it on our desk in our office because, tribulation happens. We're gone. People are walking around like, where'd all the people go? Right, and that's the whole concept behind it.
It's going to be weird when
Right.
people that we know are left and looking for us.
Right.
Hopefully they get right.
Or you could watch the extremely traumatic one that Jason and I watched.
We still haven't figured out the
Titled-
name of
Are
that
you
one.
talking about the '80s one?
The Apocalypse movie?
Yeah, it had to be early 80s probably. But
Yeah.
I swear it was called Mark of the Beast. But
It
just
wasn't from the Church of Scientology or anything?
no. No. What? So we were going to an Assembly of God church at that time, and it was a family that went to church with us, and that's who played the movie, and I watched. Yeah, just
we're gonna find it eventually.
Don't, man. PTSD is gonna kick in.
So as we keep talking about this, we're asking our listeners to chime in and find Jason and Jonathan's movie for them, so they could
figure that one out.
Watch it again and get the warm
months.
and fuzzy feeling that they had before back. So, right?
Look, it'll scare the Jesus into you. I'll tell you that much.
Maybe we need it. Something.
It was that fire and brimstone type.
I mean, even the early life of our experiences with religion, though, and that's the funny thing. That's formed religion is fire and brimstone, rules to engagement, which is exactly what we talk about Christ kind of standing against, is the fact of I came against the Sanhedrin, the Sadducees, the rules of engagement to show we have a loving God. And, you know, it's looking at a person and telling them they don't have access because they're not doing specific things. Mm-hmm. Well, the only specific thing you need for access is a relationship with Christ.
Right.
And it was getting to the point of realization of that took me from the mindset that my friend had, where it's like, that can't be true, because why are there rules of engagement? I should just live my life the way I want to, oh man, wow, it's real, right? And that's all it's about.
I found it interesting when Tucker Carlson was talking with John Rich, and he talked about it was 3 years ago that he read the Bible.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that surprised me. I thought
that caught me off guard.
Longer than that.
Yeah, and then he said, I didn't want to do it through a church, and I didn't want anybody to influence my interpretation of what I was reading. I wanted to sit there and read it on my own. You know, and he didn't say this, but he's basically saying, let the Holy Spirit influence me in what I'm reading, not have somebody else.
Right.
Which I think is awesome, but it's also good to have wise counsel, you know, to sit there with you and kind of walk you through. That's why we go to church on Sundays. That's why we get different perspectives, or you can read the same thing 3 different times, and that third time that you read it, you go,
oh, that's what it means.
Yeah. You know. But I just found it interesting.
Yeah, he's like, I ordered Bible off Amazon.com and sat there and read it by myself. And
Jeff Bezos.
But, you know, if that was only 3... He did say that.
Yeah, he did.
John did. If that was only 3 years ago, though, I find it hard to believe that Tucker didn't know anything about Christianity or the Bible.
Well, he didn't say that
before he read it.
I don't think he said that,
or
because
had
he
not
said,
read any of it.
because John Rich, their conversation was going, John Rich's dad was a pastor, was a preacher.
Right.
So he was raised in a family with it, and Tucker Carlson said, well, my dad wasn't, so it wasn't something
Quite
that
the
I was
opposite,
raised
right?
in. Right. It wasn't something that I was raised in. And then he said one thing that I hear people say all the time. It's like, well, you know, I believe in God. You know, well, so does Satan. You know, just because you believe in God doesn't mean that, you know, that you're going to be saved or that you are saved. And it was interesting to hear him get, with as smart as that guy is and with as logical in his thinking that he is with things, I was shocked. Very skeptical. But that's that logical side. I was shocked to hear that the first time that he actually dove into the Bible was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. So.
Oldest book in history.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he said himself, you know, after reading it, he was like, I was blown away.
Maybe not the oldest book in history, but I'm pretty dang old. So.
Probably the oldest. The oldest scrolls, scripture.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I mean, that's interesting. You guys are intriguing me to listen to that specifically. So
it's good.
Well, Tucker's an interesting person.
Oh, he is.
Period.
He's straight flip phone, like,
and John Rich,
from all media
John Rich
and stuff
is
like that now. outside
views on theology are they're interesting. Some of the stuff I hadn't heard before. Some of the stuff he had talked about. I forgot what verse it was, but he said I read it. When I read it correctly, it made different sense to me. I don't remember what part that was.
Yeah, and then they started bringing up the whole Scofield Bible,
yeah,
the influence behind.
And I didn't know anything really. I'd heard that,
Man.
the Scofield Bible, but I didn't know anything.
And then Tucker was talking about how much the Scofield Bible version has influenced policy through this country,
right.
which made me want to go on a deep dive and like, okay, you're talking about stuff I'm not, savvy on and familiar with. Now I need to go and do kind of a little deep dive and figure out what exactly they're talking about. So
that's how we learn and grow.
Well, but that's the whole essence of it, is like when somebody is trying to basically deter you and dictate your learning or your experience, that's the wrong. That's what we're trying to say. Like, we're here to encourage people to think differently. And if you don't think differently, if you think differently than us, that's perfectly fine. But we want you to seek out truth in your own way.
Well,
right?
and that comes down to Amber Rose. She had a view, and her dad challenged her, and she was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And in the process, ended up proving herself wrong. So it was through her research and education on her own that she was able to go, hey, all right, maybe I was thinking wrong, But I agree. It is those little things that we hear and see, which are the benefits of social media.
Yep.
Because we do have the ability to hear perspectives and people's views that we would never hear, were it not for social media, that it allows us to go and do that research. And I think the key to that is just not taking it for face value, what you're hearing, and then going and doing your own research,
right.
To try and back up whatever it is that you're hearing, or debunk whatever it is that you're hearing.
Yeah, well, it's that adage of you could hear a story a million different ways, but it's the one time you hear it in the one way that affects you, right? Because it's that ownership too. It's taking it back to how you perceive things and how you see it, and there's just one key word or one phrase used that really impacts your inner being, that speaks to you at that point. Or 15 times through a specific verse, you read it, and then you read it a different way one day, and it's like, okay, it's that impact. It's like, okay, how are you trying to continue to educate yourself and grow? And that's what it leads to, is like, okay, it goes back to our whole talk about fiction books, where you guys are like, I got all these fiction books I read, and I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Fiction, what's that?
I'm like, what's fiction? I think I read a book by Dan Brown once. They've forced me to read Fahrenheit 451. I think that's the name of the book in high school.
Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah. So, but, fiction, I was always like, all right, let's read leadership. Let's learn how to do mortgages.
Self-help. Let's learn.
I don't know this thing, so I want to learn it. I was always just that guy.
Yeah, me too.
Which is, I don't know how to do things with cars. Let's watch YouTube and fix cars. And I don't know why. I get interested in learning everything. But that's because Luke 1:37, for nothing is impossible with God. Right. I heard that verse like 10, 15 years ago in my life, 15 years ago, and I'm like, I took it to heart. I'm like, oh, I really can do everything, because God said that to Mary when he gave her Jesus. Nothing's impossible.
Was it Ephesians 6:12?
I think it was.
For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. I think that's what he was referencing, because he was saying that he was trying to counter all of the demonic and satanic stuff that is out there, because he started talking about like Super Bowl halftime shows and concerts where they're coming out and like literally doing rituals
in your face,
satanic rituals. Talked about Lil Nas and how he
putting it on TV for our kids to see.
Yep, did a lap dance on the devil,
Yeah,
and he was like, it's just, and Tucker's sitting there like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right, and Tucker's like, TV.
I don't even watch TV.
Yeah,
TV. I think I saw one in Sears once back in the 80s.
Yeah.
I don't know how that dude does that. Like that's
I don't either.
That's impressive.
That's discipline right there.
Yeah.
Or that's a peaceful, free, joyful mind. And
Right.
he's like, I don't want to mess up what's in here.
Well, he literally said that.
Yeah.
And he was like, I want to be free in my thoughts and not be influenced by everything that's out there.
It's inspirational to see that people can do that, because it helps me cut down on stuff when I see that people are happy. Living in a world without it.
I mean, I started studying marketing in college after I came from the construction world. And it's funny, the construction world, we talk about it with Jason, but it's all about how could I entice you to buy something? How could I subliminally work through your mind, trick you? Yeah, it's all about deception.
Yeah, that's why it's called a sales tactic.
Right. Well, it's funny though, because like when I truly became a great salesperson or good at what I did, it wasn't trying to deceive anybody. It was trying to find out what they actually really needed.
That's good.
Right?
That's the way it should be.
And it's so funny because you could read so many self-help books on how to become a great salesperson, but it isn't becoming a great salesperson. It's becoming a great listener. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all it's about.
Right.
And you don't even need to ask questions about it. Everybody wants to tell you about the greatest things in their life and what works for them and why it's the best. And it's until you hear what's not the best within that and what could be better, or somebody proves that to you, then that's where that aspect comes in. It's not selling, it's helping.
Right. You find
a great salesperson,
find their need and you fill it.
A great salesperson isn't selling, they're helping. And then also, too, the whole old adage, you don't want to buy from a person you don't love or trust. Your friends are the easiest people in the world to buy from. And that's it.
I mean, it comes down to, like, you don't want to hang out with a person that does nothing but talk about themselves.
Yeah.
You know, you want to hang out with somebody that is going to listen, you know, that is there to get to know you as opposed to tell you about who they are or how great they are. And that's what you're talking about right there.
Yeah. It's the whole small talk in the situation. And I mean, songs have been written about it. Back in our day, I love me for me. Right? I love me for me. Something like that. But it's, you know, it's great for you to have a notion on your own self-image and your success and confidence, because that is biblical, to be confident. But it's confident in where we're created, not confident in what you've created. And I think that's a whole mindset change, where your needs and wants counteract what's truth in some of those things. And we love to lie to ourselves, like we're doing the right things. And like it goes back to that story of the person living a lie. And it was funny because the podcast I was listening to with Brooke, because she likes to hear these conspiracy theories when we're on long drives like that, it was called Scamanda. This woman lied about having Hodgkin's lymphoma for like 7 or 8 years and just got oodles and oodles of donations from people in her church, in her community, and through things, and just lived that lie. So much so that lie continued to be her truth even when she was going through the court process and being prosecuted for the fraud. Like, she was still living in that lie. It was so crazy.
That's a mental health issue.
Right.
Did the battery die on mine?
That's the world, though, man.
Okay.
You have to maintain something. You have to have some kind of truth, even if it is you've lived something so wrong for a long time. It became her truth.
I think the best conspiracy theory that I've heard lately is with the assassination attempt. It was like, why would the FBI need somebody on that roof when there was already the CIA on that roof?
Yeah, CIA's already there. They got it covered. Duck.
It was like, oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, I think that was the first meme I saw when we were in Garland, because we were at family reunion when it happened, and my dad walks up. We're just outside on the patio talking. He's showing me his phone, and it's like, oh, they actually shot at him, huh? I was like, oh, they actually hit him. And then right after that meme popped up.
We were all ice skating at Chaparral Ice with the church staff whenever that came out. We were just wrapping up our ice time, and I think it was either Ron or Sarah that walked over and was like, "Did you just hear that they just shot Trump?" And I went, "What?" Like, so random. And of course, go to the phone, and I'm looking, and I'm like, "Oh my God!"
Instant access.
Huh?
Instant access.
Instant access.
Right. Well, which is good. So I mean, you can know whether or not what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like, and then immediately you start seeing all the memes, all the, this happened, all the false information that comes out like right off the bat, which is one of the issues with our media right now, is that they're more focused on getting the first thing out rather than vetting the information that they're putting out there.
They want the clicks, because with the clicks comes the money.
Clickbait, right?
Yep. It's all a money grab.
It is. I mean, unfortunately, our lives have become a cesspool of how could we manipulate the system, market it well, to garner votes, garner cash, garner support, garner everything. And it's just back to basics. Like,
I thought it was interesting. Somebody was like, since the assassination attempt, how many riots have there been? How many businesses have had to shut down? How many buildings have been burned down?
I'm pretty sure none.
I was like, that's a valid point of the contrast in how one side handles a situation like that versus another.
Right.
And I was like, man, I didn't even think about that.
I don't think a lot of people understand that contrast.
Yeah.
They're like, oh no, that's not our people, but they're not voting for him. That's for sure.
It was nice to see how a lot of that got handled. How like just the reaction from the crowd, that went from pure panic to instant, okay, he's all right, chanting USA, USA, USA. It was a breath of fresh air to not see victim mode kick in.
right.
Because that victim mode just kills me, man. Like, it just drives me up the wall. But it was nice to see, number one, how he handled it, how the crowd handled it, you know, and moved on. I mean, he still had his 9 a.m. tea time the next morning.
Crazy.
No, it's good, and that's what we need more of, is just people standing up for what they believe, but not diminishing or demeaning people in the process, right? I mean, and he's not the perfect view of that.
Oh no,
so
not at all.
I can't say that at all.
Not at all.
But at the same time, it's like, okay, maybe there was something that sparked him in that moment to say, what could I do better, like different, not better, right?
Both.
To
both
just bring people together, to bring this nation back to where.
So here's my view on
we don't
that.
talk on social media about politics. But
God made Trump. He doesn't make mistakes. So Trump doesn't need to be different than what God made. He just needs to be better.
Ooh, good point.
okay.
Improved, maybe?
Yeah.
Improved. You can do
Better.
improved too.
Improved,
but
is the
not
word
different.
for better.
That's true.
Because God doesn't make mistakes.
So we're gonna have another 45-minute debate on different.
You're
or
just
better.
lucky he's not here.
Yeah, I can get away with it right now, right?
He'd be
That's
like,
all right.
oh,
Just
wait
Think about
a minute.
that, Jason.
Hey, and we could use some prayers for Jason. He's been sick all week.
Yeah.
Don't know what his illness is, but we're praying for whatever that is to be gone.
It's been hitting a lot of people though.
I
I got hit by something
I had
on
a few weeks ago.
Tuesday, and it was just
ago,
it
maybe?
was like a level of exhaustion that was like almost. I was lethargic. It wasn't like I'm exhausted because of a workout, or it wasn't like I'm exhausted because I didn't get sleep. It was like I am just.
That
And
body,
I
that
came
body
home,
was sore.
went to bed at 8 o'clock.
Yeah. Probably
and
the
then
same.
woke up the next morning. I felt better the next day, and then the next day I was perfectly fine again. But I mean, that day I just I couldn't find the motivation to do anything.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it to hit me because after I do the marathon sprint of driving all those places, I typically come back and I'm run down a little bit.
You got something. You brought something back with you.
But
and
I'm
now you're sharing
good.
it with us.
I'm good. I've been good. I ran to Houston yesterday, so I was there.
You brought back Houston germs?
They're humid.
Yeah.
They are humid.
They're very humid germs, and mosquitoes are larger than most creatures I've ever seen. But
We got to go to Colorado for a week for my daughter's softball tournament.
large mosquitoes.
That place is just, we were in Fort Collins.
They have mosquitoes there?
If they do, they don't mess with you. I can tell you that much. It
No,
was
it's
just
beautiful.
to not have the humidity, and to have, I mean, we were still
Cool
dealing
weather.
with, not even cool. I mean, we still had 90+ degree days. That's hot, and you're a mile closer to the sun.
Yeah.
But it was just completely different. But it was nice because you would wake up in the morning and it would be like 56 to 60. Go sit out on the porch with your coffee, and it's like, oh my gosh, you're not drenched instantly. Like right now in Texas, in Austin, in Houston area, I swear, when you step outside, it feels like you walked into someone's mouth.
Yep.
It is just.
Melissa
instantly-
Williams said it yesterday in a post on Facebook. I feel like I live in a casserole.
Yes.
Something like that.
It's
It's like
just.
I'm living in a casserole.
Or when you open the oven, yeah, and you forget that you need to open it and let that hot air come out first.
So it's funny, like we came back and being in the Midwest, the humidity up there is like Houston humidity. So coming to Austin and feeling 92, 95 degrees, I'm like, oh, it feels good. Like this feels good to me again because 50% humidity is significantly different than 90, 100% humidity. And
huge difference.
yeah, and that's where people are like, man, it's hot out there. I'm like, I'll take what we have hot when it's 90 and 50% humidity or 95 and 50% humidity over 100% humidity and 85 degrees any day.
Yeah, I got into my car 2 days ago, and the temperature on my car said 117. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. And I'm sitting there watching it. And like, as I moved out of my parking space, started driving, it went down, but it was like
Caught a breeze.
115.
Caught a breeze.
115. But I mean, it
sitting
was
in the
still
ass-
like,
the
it was
street.
100. It was still reading 105.
Which we
Even
didn't
whenever
even-
it went down and it didn't budge from that, I was like,
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, we're all preconditioned based on last year's summer where it was just
Oh, yeah, we haven't had that really
Brutal.
bad. It's only been over 100 5 times.
I
right.
don't care.
Next week's going to be high 80s.
I want out.
High 80s
I'm
next
like,
week.
it's like winter.
High 80s is great real estate shooting weather
I want
next
out.
week.
I want out. I want 4 seasons. I don't want 2. Hot and not so hot.
Go to Amarillo.
No, no. I want
He didn't like
mountains.
tum-
I want rivers. I want lakes.
He doesn't like tumbleweeds.
Oh, yeah. we got-
We went like when
Or
we were up there,
Buffalo
and
River.
Colorado is not a place. It's not on my radar, but it was just gorgeous. We went to this one reservoir where they literally in between 2 mountains built a dam, and that valley they fill with water, and they use that for the agriculture that's in the plains areas, further east of the Rocky Mountains. And we get into the boat, and I'm like, this water's got to be cold. And he was like, yeah, it's probably 58, and what Barton Springs pool I think is
68.
68. So this is 10 degree, and that's cold. This is 10 degrees colder. And I was like, they wanted to take us tubing, so it was the couple that we were with, Casey and I and Harper, and they were like, so we have a tradition. Like, they went and pulled into a cove, and they stopped, and they were like, we all stand on the edge of the boat, and on the count of 3 we all jump in. I was like, oh my gosh. We jump
Takes your
in.
breath away.
Oh, instant. Breath taken away, and I was like,
I was in the pool.
but once you get into it and you get, I don't
Acclimated.
know, acclimated is probably better because you don't ever really get used to it because it's cold. Like, we had a blast out there, man. Like, just and having the mountains right there as you're riding in that boat, and and Harper blew me away. We put her on the tube, And like I got onto that tube, and like, man, my grip and my forearms wore out so quick. And then it was me and the guy Brad, and his wife was driving, and I swear she was doing everything that she could to knock us off of that thing. And like I just couldn't. She at one point she kicked to the side, and I went to lean with it, and my foot came out, and it was my outer foot. And whenever it hit the water, it took it and shot it under me, which then twisted my body, and I went flying off of that thing. Well, then we got Harper, who wanted to just keep doing it over and over, just keep going over and over. So we put her on that thing. She lasted 15 minutes on that thing. And Brad was driving at that point, and he was like, "Hey, like we gotta." He couldn't get her. He couldn't knock her off of that thing. Now, mind you, she's 14. She's tiny.
He
She fits
too
on
hard.
that tube. Huh?
Was he trying hard?
Oh, he was trying to knock her off because she kept like she would pull her knees up on it like that, and she would hold with one hand and look at him and go. So she was egging him on. Yeah, she was egging him on, and he was trying everything. Figure eights, full circles multiple times, taking her back through the wake.
And she's just hanging on with one hand.
Yeah. Like, and I'm like, are you kidding me? I didn't last 5 minutes on that thing, and my hands were just like, I got out. Now they're already cold, but I got out, and like you're just sitting there, and your hands are stuck in this position. I'm like, oh. But man, it was fun to watch. It was fun to get away for a week. You know, we went on some great hikes. It's just, man, it's beautiful in the mountains.
Yeah.
It's just,
It is.
like, go there and tell me there's not a God.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, it is just breathtaking.
Beautiful.
It's a painting of beauty.
Well,
I still see the beauty in the heat, though,
No,
sometimes.
there is no beauty in heat. Absolutely not. I'm
Hey, there's
done
Four
with it.
Seasons in,
We have Barton
in Chicago.
Springs.
You could always move there.
I can always jump in Barton Springs here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when you get out, it's still,
100 degrees.
oh my
95% humidity.
yeah, Casey and I are done. I'm ready to retire and go find me a place with a mountain, a river that I can fly fish, and 4 seasons.
Yeah.
The shortest one being
Arkansas?
winter.
Tennessee.
Well, Arkansas, Tennessee, the Carolinas. I'd even be interested in looking at Kentucky, like some of the areas in Kentucky. And then the one that blew me away was northern Georgia. Like, I'm
that's
used
beautiful.
to southern Georgia, had no clue until a buddy of mine and I made a road trip to North Carolina, and he's from Atlanta, right on the outside, Roswell, Georgia. So we stopped there, and then we drove up the next day into North Carolina because we were going to, what is it called? Is it Black Mountain? Black Mountain, North Carolina. It's right outside of Asheville. We went through northern Georgia, like Tallulah Falls. It's like, oh, that place is,
Yeah.
that's breathtaking.
Yeah, we were just up in Chattanooga and Lookout Mountain, Georgia, where my niece got married last year. It's beautiful up there, man.
It is. Like Texas, I love you, but I'm out.
Green, pretty
Yeah.
country. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing is when you get greener in Texas, you lose your mountains.
Yeah,
Yeah.
In East Texas, anyway.
for sure.
Well, there are, you mean hills.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, you got Big Bend is
then
pretty
you,
mountainous.
You could find them back again in Arkansas if you can stand Arkansas. But that's hot and humid too. So
Well, it depends on what parts.
Yeah.
If you're going to go if you're going to leave Texas, I would just go past Arkansas. Just keep going.
They've got some pretty places.
If you're going to pick
in
somewhere else, you
Arkansas,
do.
but
You just named a
Arkansas
bunch
is
of better
not.
places.
That is not on
Plus
the
you're at
radar.
the coast. You got
Well,
the
then you
ocean
really
out
get
there.
the humidity whenever you hit the coast. So my view is if we were to go to like Florida or one of the Carolinas on the coast, I would have to be on the water. If I'm going to put up with the humidity, I have to be on the water. And
you
guess
just
what?
dip in.
I can't afford to live on the water. So I'll take mountains. I'll take mountains and rivers.
I mean, plenty of lakes out that way too, though. So
I'll take the lakes too.
Yeah.
But the rivers.
Montana.
So I can't do that winter. That's too harsh of a
wintry?
winter. Yeah. We went up there. We were in Whitefish, and Whitefish was breathtaking. Went up to Glacier. Glacier was amazing. But yeah, I couldn't do the winters. Not that harsh of a winter. But as far as beauty, spring, summer, and fall, man, when you start getting up into that part of the country, it's just beautiful.
cool.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up,
What do you
man. Enough talk about where life is bringing us, and
yeah, how do we close that out? We went from conspiracy and politics and religion and devil
we need 4 seasons
to move into the 4 seasons.
It's all beautiful, but that's cool, man. That's just what we get when we love and support a God that we do. So it's great. Get to relish in all of it. So that's it, man.
All right.
Thank you all.
Peace out.
We don't have Jason to
give us a sign off.
Close us out.
Yeah.
If you're still around, go and like all the pages that Jason always tells you to. Go Talk Texas, Close Cover Podcast. We'll see if we keep this part. We might not.
On the Ticket
And
Talk.
check out all of the other things under Go Talk Texas.
All the other ones, too.
Yeah.
We're getting more coming up soon.
Awesome.